Do you agree with Benjamin Netanyahu that there needs to be this kind of extreme force in response?
Well, you know, I think they're a very small country surrounded by countries that are really trying to destroy them. I have here just a little thing from the Hamas. There's a whole series of television programs in which they say to their kids, there is no such thing as Israel. There is no Israel. Can you see the map of Palestine? All of it will return to us.
This is from where here? Let me just take a look at this. Okay. So this is from where?
These are pictures that are put out by the Palestinian Media Watch. Now, the only thing I'm saying here is that anybody who knows that region knows that there is an unrelenting attack on Israel in every possible way, whether it's propaganda, whether it's public affairs, whether it's military, whether it's intelligence, everything, okay? Now, but this whole thing changed, okay, once you had weaponry that was rocketry, okay, fortunately, the Israelis had this protective system, the Iron Dome, in which they were able to interdict these missiles that were being sent. But you can imagine if the United States had Canada sending in these missiles every day and Mexico on the other, what the response would be.
Okay, Mort, let me just hold this up for our viewers so that just in case this is from what is this called? The Palestinian Media Watch. Okay. So, Richard, I want to bring you in on this conversation. So, Mort, looks through this and he says, "Look, you see this on television, that there's no such thing as Israel. There is no Israel, according to Hamas TV, and the Israelis say that is a justification that they see for basically defending themselves from this kind of attack." What's your response to this, Richard?
Well, Israel, like any nation-state, obviously has the right to self-defense. The problem with the Israeli strategy, it's really the Israeli predicament, is that it cannot eliminate Hamas politically or militarily through attacks, no matter how severe the attacks are. And indeed, to some extent, it actually could strengthen Hamas, because Hamas will survive even if it's weakened, and then it reinforces its standing as the only Palestinian group willing to stand up to Israel. So I would say in the short run, the best strategy for Israel is to figure out a way of getting what the Prime Minister called calm for calm, some sort of a ceasefire, which admittedly does not resolve the situation, but at least it calms it. And then I do think the Israelis need to reconsider their diplomatic or political strategy and what they can do to possibly split Hamas away from the more moderate or less radical Palestinians and see if they can't get serious about negotiating a deal with those Palestinians who essentially run the West Bank.
I agree with that, but being directly involved in this thing, I can say they've been trying to negotiate with Hamas, and anybody who sees what Hamas does, what Hamas says, not only to the Israelis but to their own people, which this is an illustration, Hamas is not prepared to do it. They're a very radical regime.
No one is suggesting here that Israel negotiate with Hamas. My whole point is that the Israelis need a strategy for negotiating with those Palestinians who at least have been historically prepared to negotiate and to accept Israel. They've not been historically prepared to make major compromises for peace, however.
Yeah, but I do think, in fact, I know, and you know, that they have been trying to have these negotiations, and they have been unsuccessful. Because, in fact, what's happened is that there is, in effect, a struggle between Hamas and the slightly more moderate groups. And the moderate groups are afraid to be too moderate because Hamas, frankly, appeals to the fundamental views of a lot of the Palestinians. So it's a hugely complicated thing. The Israelis have tried through God knows how many administrations, to how many years and decades, to develop this kind of peaceful resolution. It has not taken place. In part, I might say, it's going to take an outside party, for example, the Americans, if they could properly handle themselves, which I don't believe they have, to lead the two of them together to a common ground.
Well, Richard, do you think the Americans have the wherewithal to be able to broker something?
Well, history would suggest a little bit of modesty here. Any number of American secretaries of state and administrations have tried. I don't think in the particular circumstances the situation is particularly ripe for a diplomatic breakthrough. John Kerry tried a whole lot.
Right.
That said, it's the only real game in town, and I would say you need to strengthen the Palestinians on the West Bank economically. One has to also build them up more in the security sense, and then you've got to put something generous on the table, and I think that is the only hope we have, lest we find ourselves every couple of years facing a new Hamas-led sort of intifada, but armed with ever more dangerous systems, as Israel is now facing.